So one of the things that I had to learn in order to start to recover was realizing that it was my resistance to what was happening that was making things really difficult for me. You could say it was what was causing me to suffer throughout this journey. Once I learned that there was symptoms that would come, there would be uncomfortable sensations. You know, in a crash, it would feel really uncomfortable and you'd want to distract yourself, or that's how it was for me. You know, I didn't want to be in the body and feel what was happening when I was having a so-called crash. But through meditation and, you know, learning to just sit with what was there, you know, and I learned this from other people. I learned that the reason it was so difficult was because I was resisting what was there. You know, there were sensations, there were experiences happening, and because I didn't want it to be happening, that makes it super uncomfortable because it's happening whether you want it to or not. And then wishing that, oh, I wish this crash hadn't happened. I wish I was feeling how I did before. That's what makes things uncomfortable because you're resisting what's happening. So, yeah, I guess it starts with that realization, you know, learning that that is the case. And then from there, it was learning to, you know, curiosity is a big part of it as well. So you can like counter that by becoming curious about what you're feeling and why is it so uncomfortable. You know, what is so bad about it? It is like, what is it? So that's a good place to start, and it was for me. Is like, okay, I'm feeling pretty crappy right now. You know, let's explore this. Let's see what's going on. So where am I feeling crappy? Okay, maybe I've got a really bad headache. Okay, you know, let's sit and feel into this headache. What is it? Okay, it's like some sensations in my head. It's some tension. Okay, let's. So it's like good to start like that, like to get yourself closer to the direct experience, but then just keep digging in. What is it like? Okay, so there's those sensations, but like, what about the sensations is so bad? And the more you like get closer to the actual experience of what is happening, you realize that when you're just experiencing it, it's not so bad. It's when you're in the thoughts about what's happening, that's when it's bad. It's when you're, you know, going about doing things, oh, I wish this headache wasn't here. This headache is like making everything so horrible. If only I didn't have this headache. You know, this headache is been here for hours. It's so unfair. I would like, you know, that person doesn't have a headache. Why me? All of that kind of stuff. That's when you're suffering. When you're just feeling, what is this headache? What are the sensations of it? What are you resisting? You realize that it's just a sensation. And maybe you can only like, you know, it's difficult at first. It's not like it just suddenly goes away. Like, oh, now there's no headache anymore. It's, that sensation's still there, but the closer you can get to it, the less of a problem it is. And that headache is just one example. You know, like when I'm in a crash, my whole body would be feeling like, I can't even remember, but I remember it was extremely uncomfortable in the body, like all of these different sensations that I really didn't want to feel. Um, and the more you can just sit with it and get into the body and notice like when you're in the thoughts and resisting, it really is a massive difference. So as I said, curiosity is a great like way in. It's just like, what is this? Like, this is just a sensation. Why is it so uncomfortable? And the more I could do this, you know, really sit with the symptoms. Like, okay, cool. There's symptoms now. Let's explore them. And it changes your relationship to symptoms, which is crucial. And it was for me, was like a symptoms appears. And initially there was resistance, like, oh shit, there's symptoms again, you know, like I'm doing something, symptoms are coming, am I going to crash? The thoughts would come, the resistance would come. And then it's like, okay, wait, here's symptoms. This is an opportunity to see why symptoms are bad, you know. So it's like, it really works in a lot of ways. It changes your relationship to symptoms. So already there's less resistance. You're now symptoms come, you see the resistance, you're like, wait, this is an opportunity, there's less resistance already, and then there's this practice of like sitting with the symptoms, feeling into it. Where in the body am I feeling symptoms now? And it's generally going to be like some sort of tension or like contraction or something in the body, like in the chest, maybe feeling really, really tight and uncomfortable. And just going deeper and deeper, and yeah, start small. See if you can sit with the sensations for 5 minutes and try to stay with the sensation, and just really get curious about it. Like, why is this uncomfortable? What is pain? Maybe feeling a lot of pain. Like, what is pain? Why is pain horrible? Like, why don't I like pain? And we are wired to not like pain. It's an important part of our survival mechanisms. If we liked pain, we wouldn't survive very long. So, there is a natural resistance to pain. But if you really get close to that pain, you can kind of see that it's just a really intense sensation. That's kind of what it is. Like, pain is very intense, but it's not like, when you get really into it, it's just intense. It's only a problem when you don't want it to be there. When you think about how long this pain is going to be here for, and you don't want it to carry on being here, that's when it's a problem. So this is kind of was like the key to my recovery. Like, later on, like after I changed my beliefs and I believed that recovery was possible, and I was trying things, and I was pushing myself and challenging myself in small ways, it was then when I started changing my relationship to symptoms and my resistance, and realizing what was keeping me stuck was resistance. That's when everything started to change. So it's a really, yeah, I'd say this was the most important factor for me. There was loads of things that I did beforehand that can make you more able to do this. So like starting a meditation practice where you learn to just sit and feel sensations for like 10 minutes, or observe your thoughts for 10 minutes. Like a mindfulness of the breath practice where you keep your attention on your breath, and then you notice, oh, my mind was wandering, and you keep bringing it back. That gives you kind of a little bit more space to work in, because you become more aware of when you're getting caught up in thoughts. Whereas, like early on in my journey, when I was like, I hadn't done any meditation at all, you don't even know when you're caught up in thoughts, right? Like, there's just thoughts happening, and you're believing all the thoughts. The thoughts are saying this and this and this, and you are believing that you are the thoughts. You're not seeing that you're like caught up in the thoughts. So that's why I say there was like a lot of work that I did first, but then this resistance practice and acceptance work was what really started to, like, things started to change throughout that. So yeah, maybe, if you don't have a meditation practice, just practice being comfortable sitting and observing thoughts, and that can be very impactful in its own, if it's not something you've done before. Just taking the time to stop and look inward can really have a massive impact. So yeah, that was a really important part of the journey for me. And the more I was able to do it, then I would be able to carry it around with me throughout the day. So like, if I'm doing something and I notice that I'm feeling uncomfortable and I'm thinking about a crash or something, then you learn, like, oh shit, I'm resisting something. Like that's why this is a problem. I'm not just okay with what is. So what am I resisting? So then that kind of became just like the inquiry, or the go-to was, what am I resisting? And then like looking in your experience. Okay, my chest is becoming tight. Headaches coming on. I can't even remember what all the different symptoms were for me, but whatever it is, there would be something I was resisting. So it's like, oh, okay, can I not resist that? Can I just feel into that? And it almost became like a relaxing into the discomfort. So it was like, oh, let's let that be there, and let's feel it and relax into it. That's kind of what it would feel like. And as I said, it can be difficult, and maybe you can only do it for a little bit, but it really made a big difference for me. And then, yeah, slowly the symptoms would come, and accept them. Okay, feel into it, and then the more you do that, the less the symptoms come. But it has to start with not resisting. And one more important tip is and this is going to happen probably because it did happen with me, and I think it happens with everyone, is you start to do this non-resistance practice in order to get rid of the symptom. So say you're having symptoms, you know about this resistance, like resistance is causing your suffering. So you're like, okay, I'm going to feel into this. I'm going to accept the symptom in order to get rid of it, right? And that's still resistance, subtly. It's like you want this symptom not to be here anymore, so you're gonna accept it to get rid of it, which is a more subtle form of resistance. But as I said, I think it's a start. You're going to do that. I would do that. I would be like, oh, there's symptoms. I don't want these symptoms to be here, so let's do this. But then you start to notice that you're like, oh shit, okay, like this symptom just needs to be here. Like I'm not trying to get rid of it. And it does tend, like if you can fully just accept it, it does tend to go away. But it's really, you'll notice yourself that when you're trying to get rid of it, it doesn't work. And you'll think about like the one time it did work, and you're like, okay, last time I did this, it worked. So like I really need to do the same thing as I did last time. But it's not like that. It's just like, what's here? Get curious, explore it. Don't have any expectations for where it's going to lead. Don't say, I'm trying to make this happen. You can't control it. You can just get curious and explore the experience. What is so bad about this? Why do I not want to feel this? It's a really good practice, and it was probably, towards the end, it was what really accelerated the recovery process for me, because your relationship just changes, and then symptoms aren't a problem. You can do things, you can have symptoms, you get comfortable with the symptoms, and everything starts to change. So I highly recommend giving this a try and seeing how it goes for you, and just start small, and the more you can do it, just keep going with it. A quick tip I just thought of as a good way to get started with this is, if it's really difficult to sit with the sensations when you're having symptoms, and you feel yourself going into your mind, or you're just really resisting a lot, and it probably will be like that at first. A good way to start can just be to like investigate temperature. Like you're sitting outside and you start to get a bit cold and it gets uncomfortable. It's like, okay, what is uncomfortable about this? Like why is it uncomfortable to be cold? What I started doing quite early in my recovery journey, still when I was struggling a lot and I really couldn't do much, one of the first things I introduced was just driving down to the beach. I stay close to a lagoon, and I would get into the cold water, and it was quite an uncomfortable process. It was like really cold, it was winter, and there's a whole lot of sensations you don't want to feel. Like at first it's really difficult getting into the water, but I could start to feel into the cold, like, okay, what's so cold about this? It's just like a natural reaction from my body. Let me feel into these sensations of the freezing cold. And the longer I would stay in the water and get comfortable and relax into the sensations, it would become quite pleasant, the cold. So that's like a different way to introduce it. But the thing is, as someone struggling with a chronic illness, you will have a lot of opportunities to sit with uncomfortable symptoms and sensations. So, the symptoms will most likely come. So there's your chance. Just start feeling into it in whichever way you can. But you can also practice and explore this, through other things that you find uncomfortable, like feeling too cold before you go put on a jersey. Just feel a bit. Go for a walk barefoot and feel the cold on your feet, or whatever it is for you. There's different ways you can start to introduce this, but as I said, you should get a lot of opportunities otherwise. So good luck with this. Let me know how it goes, and if you guys have any other things that you would like me to specifically talk about, please let me know in the comments. I'm going to try to talk about the things that I feel are important for recovery, so not like really narrowing in on what were the symptoms I had. I don't feel like that's going to help other people recover. But let me know, and I'll make a video if I think it can help you guys.